The storm that night wasn't just outside the window of Caleb Stone's modest home. It brewed in the very air he breathed, especially within the hollowed, hostile halls of Sterling Corp. Caleb, a 40-year-old former Marine, was just another face in the night shift security detail at a company that practically built the town of Rosewood, brick by arrogant brick. He worked hard, kept to himself, focused on his daughter, Maya, who was 8 years old and his whole world. But some worlds, particularly that of Victor Sterling, the CEO, didn't see beyond a man's skin or his paycheck. They saw what they chose to see, and for Victor, that was nothing but an obstacle, a shadow. Victor Sterling. The name itself felt like a decree, a dynasty built on old money and even older prejudices. He moved through life with the silent arrogance of inherited power, gliding through the gleaming lobbies of Sterling Corp, past the very security desk where Caleb sat. His gaze never quite met Caleb's. It was a curated contempt, an unspoken declaration of hierarchy that seeped into every corner of the building. Caleb could feel it, the low hum of prejudice, the silent judgment whispered in boardrooms, reinforced in every casual slight. Victor spoke in veiled terms about certain types, about knowing one's place. It was a constant, subtle jab, reminding Caleb that in Victor's eyes, his military service, his dedication, his very humanity meant less than the shine on Victor's expensive Italian leather shoes. It burned, a slow, steady ember, but decades of life had taught Caleb to bank that fire, to let them underestimate him. They always do. That fateful night, the heavens opened up, unleashing a fury that tore through Rosewood. Trees snapped, power lines danced, and rain lashed down with biblical force. Caleb was making his final rounds when he saw her, a figure huddled, utterly lost, under the flimsy awning of a dark gas station on the outskirts of town. A young woman, soaked to the bone, shivering, her phone dead. She introduced herself as Chloe, a college student, caught off guard. Caleb's first instinct, honed by years of service and simple decency, wasn't to question, but to help. "Come on," he offered, the words coming out before he even thought. "My place isn't much, but it's dry and warm. You can weather the storm there." He brought her into his modest home, a simple act of compassion for a stranger. Maya, his little girl, with her boundless curiosity, loved having Emma, as Chloe called herself, around. For 2 weeks, Chloe became a part of their quiet routine. She helped with chores, played Lego with Maya, laughed with them like they were old friends. Never once did the thought cross Caleb's mind, not even a whisper, that this kind, vulnerable soul was Chloe Davenport, the hidden heiress to the rival Davenport empire, a fortune that dwarfed Sterling's, or that his simple act of kindness would ignite a powder keg under his own life. Chloe left one morning, leaving a heartfelt, handwritten thank you note, and Caleb thought that was that, a good deed done. 3 days later, the phone rang, late, disrupting the quiet hum of his home. It was Victor Sterling. His voice, stripped bare of its usual corporate polish, was pure ice. "You really thought you could take advantage of my daughter and get away with it, Stone?" he spat, the words sharp as broken glass. Caleb could feel the blood drain from his face, his hand trembling around the receiver, but his voice, surprisingly, held steady. "I'm going to destroy you and your pathetic family," Victor promised. He listed it all out, a litany of ruin, kidnapping charges, professional suspension, losing Maya. "I'll see you out on the street," he threatened. Maya, his sweet Maya, appeared in the kitchen doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Daddy, who's yelling on the phone?" she asked. Caleb forced a smile, his heart a jackhammer in his chest. "Just some loud noises outside, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." He hung up, the dial tone a death knell in the silence. What Victor Sterling couldn't possibly fathom, what his privileged bubble would never allow him to grasp, was that the quiet man he sought to crush wasn't just a security guard. He was a survivor, a veteran of harder battles, and every single threat, every calculated word was being meticulously noted, filed away. Not because he was suspicious, but because it was second nature, a habit forged in the crucible of military protocol and refined by years in healthcare. Victor thought he was dismantling Caleb's life. He was, in fact, laying the groundwork for his own spectacular downfall. And Caleb Stone, serene in his quiet determination, was ready to document every single glorious step of it. Victor Sterling didn't waste any time. The first sign that my life was about to become a living hell came swift and brutal. A call to the hospital boardroom where my supervisor, a man who usually met my eye, suddenly couldn't look at me. "We received an anonymous complaint about your inappropriate behavior outside of work," he mumbled, and I knew instantly. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a targeted attack. Within days, the storm hit full force. I watched, numb, as a security guard, armed with a suspicious court order, ransacked my modest apartment, turning my little sanctuary upside down. Maya, my sweet Maya, clung to my leg, her innocent eyes wide with confusion and fear. My heart shattered seeing her like that, but I simply stroked her hair, whispering, "Don't worry, honey. Some very powerful people are about to find out they've completely underestimated the wrong man." The persecution intensified with a terrifying speed that felt straight out of a mob movie. The next day, a notification from Maya's school informed me her tuition had been blocked due to pending legal issues. My health insurance? Canceled. My bank account? Frozen for suspicious activity. Even the financing for our small apartment, the place I'd worked so hard for, was jeopardized. "Daddy, why did the lady at school say I can't eat in the cafeteria anymore?" Maya asked, her voice small, as I drove her home. That question, so innocent, yet so loaded with the weight of injustice, felt like a physical blow. I hugged her tight, feeling the burning injustice in my chest. Victor Sterling wasn't just seeking revenge. He was using his financial power as a weapon, systematically cutting off every single aspect of our lives. He wanted to utterly destroy an innocent family. The late-night calls became a grim routine. 2 in the morning, always. "See how easy it is to dismantle your pathetic little life?" Victor's voice would drip with venom. "Tomorrow, I'm canceling the rest of your contracts. In a week, you'll be out on the street, and that's just the beginning." He had no idea who he was talking to. See, Victor Sterling grew up in a gilded cage. I grew up in public orphanages, navigating a system that tried to break me when I was barely 5. I knew intimately what it felt like to have everything brutally ripped away, to be underestimated by people who judged my worth solely on the color of my skin and the absence of an important last name. He called me another freeloader, said Chloe was vulnerable, confused, and I took advantage. I stayed silent, letting him dig his own grave with every prejudiced, privileged word. Every single one was being recorded on an app I'd discreetly downloaded after his very first threat. A habit, you see. Years of working in hospital environments where documentation wasn't just a good idea, it was a matter of life and death. "People like you, Stone," he'd spit, "need to be reminded of their place in society. You thought you could play happy family with a Davenport? My daughter is worth more than you could ever hope to earn in 10 lifetimes." His arrogance was truly boundless. But then, an unexpected knock on the door. Dr. Martha Reynolds, a civil rights lawyer I'd met years ago during a discrimination case at the hospital, her face set with grim determination. She stepped inside, not waiting for an invitation, which I appreciated. "I've heard rumors about your situation, Caleb," she said. "Victor Sterling isn't just known for his wealth. He has a history of using legal intimidation to silence people he considers unsuitable for his family." Martha laid out the pattern, spreading documents across my coffee table. Threats, financial persecution, legal pressure, until the person simply vanished from their lives. 3 years earlier, he'd financially ruined a young teacher who dared to fall for his niece. 2 years before that, he destroyed the career of an artist his eldest daughter met in Paris. "It always works," Martha explained, "because his victims are ordinary people without the resources to fight back." I looked at the papers, then at Maya, quietly playing in the corner, sensing the tension in the air. Something shifted inside me, not despair, not fear, but a cold, quiet resolve that Martha recognized instantly. "He doesn't know who he's messing with," I muttered, a dangerous spark in my eyes. People like Sterling live in such privileged bubbles that they forget there are other kinds of power besides money. While Victor Sterling was busy celebrating what he believed was another easy victory against an inferior family, I was quietly opening a folder on my computer. 2 years of meticulous documentation of every moment Chloe had spent in my home. Every tear of gratitude, every genuine smile exchanged with Maya. A story completely different from the version his prejudiced mind had constructed. Each new threat only strengthened something inside me, a silent force fueled by the very injustice they tried to impose. I was preparing to reveal truths that would shake the Sterling empire to its gilded foundations. The harassment from Victor Sterling only intensified, becoming a relentless torrent designed to drown me. The next morning, it was my professional license, temporarily suspended, they said, due to a mysterious ethical investigation. My bank account, already frozen, now had a note about suspicious activity. Even my landlord, a sweet old lady who'd known me for years, got an anonymous call about troublesome tenants. Everywhere I turned, a new wall went up. "Daddy, why were those men taking pictures of our house?" Maya asked, clinging to my leg, her voice small and confused. I'd seen them, the private investigators, circling our block like vultures, documenting my every move, every visitor. Victor Sterling thought he was breaking me financially, cornering me before any formal legal proceedings could even begin. He was trying to push me to the brink, to make me crack. But Victor Sterling had completely underestimated who he was dealing with. He saw a security guard. He didn't see a Caleb Stone forged in the unforgiving crucible of the foster care system, learning from a young age to navigate complex welfare bureaucracies, to meticulously document every official interaction. My time as a Marine, then later as a nurse, had only sharpened this skill, turning it into a silent, potent weapon. "He's trying to break me financially before any legal proceedings," I explained to Martha Reynolds during one of our late-night sessions, our little apartment now a command center of quiet rebellion. "But his every move is being recorded, every threat documented. He's building our case against himself." Martha's smile, usually reserved, grew into one of fierce admiration. "Caleb," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "do you realize we have enough material here, not just for criminal charges, but for a civil suit that could cost him millions?" It was a satisfying thought, a sweet whisper of justice after weeks of silent torment. The decisive moment came unexpectedly, a lifeline thrown from the very heart of the enemy's camp. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. It was Chloe. Her voice, heavy with tears and despair, was barely audible. "Caleb, I need to talk to you. My father is saying horrible things about you and Maya. He's planning something terrible." She choked back a sob. "He's hired people to plant evidence in your house." My blood ran cold, but I kept my voice calm, steady. "Chloe, are you okay? Where are you now?" "I'm hiding in his office," she whispered, the background muffled. I overheard a phone conversation. He's going to try to frame you for kidnapping and worse things. Caleb, you have to get out of there. Take Maya and get out of town." Martha, who was listening on speakerphone, nodded, her eyes wide. She was recording everything. "Chloe, listen carefully," I said, my voice firm. "Don't do anything that could put you in danger. But if you can, document these conversations." "I'm already doing that," she whispered, a new strength in her voice. "For weeks, I have recordings, emails, messages. Caleb, my father isn't just cruel, he's dangerous. He's ruined so many people." The call cut off abruptly, but the revelation completely changed the game. It wasn't just Caleb and Martha against a powerful billionaire anymore. We had an ally on the inside, someone with direct access to Sterling's strategies and evidence. That night, I put Maya to bed with a serenity she hadn't seen in days. She noticed, "Daddy, you seem less worried today." I kissed her forehead gently. "Sometimes, sweetheart, when very bad people try to hurt good people, they end up hurting themselves, and Daddy is just waiting for that to happen." In the kitchen, Martha organized documents with an efficiency that impressed even me. "Do you realize what we have here?" she said, pointing to the piles of evidence. "This isn't just a case of harassment or intimidation. It's a criminal pattern of conspiracy, extortion, and abuse of power." I nodded, but my eyes revealed something deeper. "Martha, I grew up being underestimated my whole life, by teachers, by bosses, by a system that saw me as just another young black man with no future. I learned that the best defense isn't to fight back with anger, it's to let others reveal who they really are, and Victor Sterling is revealing much more than he realizes." Martha smiled, a shared understanding passing between us. As we organized the last pieces of evidence for the night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Chloe. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m., he's going to plant drugs in your house. I have a recording of him ordering it. Don't be there." I showed the message to Martha, who immediately began making calls. "Let's turn his trap into our biggest victory," she said, her eyes shining with fierce determination. For a moment, looking out the window, watching the private investigators still circling my street, anyone would have thought they were witnessing yet another easy victory for a billionaire over a humble family. But anyone who looked closely at the serene smile on Caleb Stone's face would have noticed that it wasn't resignation that moved him. It was the quiet confidence of someone who was about to turn his oppressor's arrogance into the weapon of his own destruction. At 9:45 a.m., Caleb sat calmly in a nondescript van parked 3 blocks from his home, watching multiple computer screens that transmitted live images from every room in his apartment. Martha had organized a professional surveillance system during the night, hidden cameras placed at strategic angles. "They're here," Martha whispered, pointing to one of the screens showing 2 men dressed as maintenance technicians approaching the back door. One of them carried a toolbox suspiciously heavy for a simple plumbing job. Caleb adjusted the headphones connected to the directional microphones that had been discreetly installed. Every word, every movement was being recorded in high definition with automatic timestamps and GPS locations. "Are you sure the big guy isn't home?" asked the first man as he forced the lock with a professional master key. "Sterling confirmed he's at work until noon," replied the second, removing 3 small plastic packages from the toolbox. "Let's spread these all over the house, the kids' room, the kitchen, under the mattress. The more obvious, the better." Caleb clenched his fists but kept his breathing under control. Maya was safe at Martha's house, completely unaware of the horror her father was witnessing unfold in her home. At 10:05 a.m., exactly as Chloe had predicted, Victor Sterling called the local police station directly. "I have information about suspicious drug activity at apartment 17 on Maple Street," he said, using a slightly disguised voice. "I believe there is a child in immediate danger." What Victor didn't know was that Martha had anticipated this move. Through her contacts in the judicial system, she had discreetly alerted the Department of Internal Affairs about a possible evidence planting operation involving a local billionaire. When Detective Harrison and his team arrived at Caleb's apartment, they didn't just find the planted drugs. They also found the two technicians still on the scene, an active security camera streaming everything live to civil rights lawyers, and crystal-clear audio recordings of Victor Sterling coordinating the entire operation. "Mr. Sterling," Detective Harrison said on the phone, his voice laden with a professional coldness that made the billionaire immediately realize that something had gone terribly wrong. "We need to talk now." Victor's first reaction was to try to use his usual influence. "Detective, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Victor Sterling of Sterling Corp. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting through my attorneys." "Mr. Sterling," Harrison interrupted him, his voice firm, "you are under formal investigation for conspiracy, planting evidence, attempted framing of an innocent person, and a list of other charges that your attorneys can explain in detail. I suggest you come voluntarily." Meanwhile, across town, Caleb watched in real time as the empire Victor had used as a weapon against innocent families was meticulously dismantled. "The recordings of the threatening phone calls have already been sent to the district attorney's office," Martha explained, showing a checklist on her tablet. "The financial documents Chloe provided us revealed 3 other identical cases in the last 5 years. And best of all," Martha smiled, opening a new screen, "the media already has everything. Channel 7 News, the Tribune, even the Washington Herald. The story will be on all networks." At 6 p.m., Caleb watched the images of Victor Sterling being escorted out of his corporate building by federal agents. The man who had terrorized his family for weeks now walked with his head bowed, surrounded by reporters and cameras. His arrogance transformed into palpable despair. My phone rang. It was Chloe. Her voice choked, but relieved. "Caleb, I did it. I have recordings of at least 10 calls where he plans to destroy innocent people. I have emails, bank transfers, everything." "Chloe, are you safe?" I asked, genuinely concerned for the young woman who had risked everything to expose her own father's crimes. "I'm moving to my aunt's house in Seattle," she replied. "But before I go, I wanted you to know that those 2 weeks at your house were the first time in my life I felt like I was part of a real family. Maya is lucky to have you as a father." That evening, as the news anchor's voices filled our small kitchen, detailing Victor Sterling's indictment on multiple federal charges, it felt surreal. "Billionaire businessman arrested for conspiracy and systematic persecution of vulnerable families," the anchor announced, her voice grave. "Documents obtained exclusively by our station reveal a pattern of abuse of power that spans more than a decade." Maya, perched on her stool, looked at me confused. "Daddy, is that the man who is being mean to us?" she asked. I turned off the television and knelt down, pulling her into a tight hug. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "But now he can't hurt our family or any other family anymore." The relief that washed over me was profound, a calm after a seemingly endless storm. Victor Sterling's downfall was swift and brutal. The man who had terrorized my family for weeks, walking with his head bowed, surrounded by reporters and cameras, his arrogance replaced by palpable despair. Martha had orchestrated a multi-pronged operation that went far beyond simple defense. The recordings of his threatening phone calls were already with the district attorney's office. Chloe's financial documents had exposed 3 other identical cases in the last 5 years. And the media, bless their hungry hearts, had everything. Channel 7 News, the Tribune, even the Washington Herald. The story exploded across every network. While Victor Sterling's empire crumbled, I refused the spotlight. My victory wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about protecting Maya, preserving our dignity, and proving that justice knows no color, social class, or bank account. My phone still rang off the hook with interview requests, documentary offers, but I politely declined most. The real work was just beginning. 3 months later, the man who had tried to destroy my life out of pure prejudice was facing the complete ruin of everything he had built through intimidation and abuse of power. But the true victory wasn't just Victor Sterling's downfall. It was the fact that I had protected my daughter, preserved my dignity, and proven that justice knows no color, social class, or bank account. It only requires courage, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to accept that injustice is inevitable. The call came from Martha Martinez one night after Maya was asleep. "Caleb, do you have any idea what you've done?" she asked, her voice alight with triumph. "Sterling didn't just lose his company. The board voted unanimously to remove him. His accounts have been frozen pending a federal investigation, and 3 other families he had persecuted are filing million-dollar civil suits." I looked out the window of my small apartment, the same place where it had all begun when I took in a frightened young girl during a storm. It all came full circle. Then came the unexpected knock a few weeks later. Chloe Davenport, now using her mother's maiden name, Moore, stood at my door. She looked different, not just physically, but there was a quiet confidence in her eyes, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there when she was Emma, or even when she was the terrified heiress. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said, sitting in my humble living room. "Not just for protecting me, but for showing me that there are people willing to do what's right even when it costs them everything." She explained that she had used her remaining inheritance, the assets she managed to salvage before her father's complete bankruptcy, to establish a fund to support families who were victims of corporate persecution. She was studying law, planning to devote her career to cases similar to mine. "My father always told me that people like you were different, inferior," she said, tears welling in her eyes, reflecting years of personal growth and shattered illusions. "It took me 22 years to understand that the only person who was inferior was him and me for believing his lies." Just then, Maya, home from school, walked into the room and immediately recognized her. "Emma!" she cried, rushing to hug Chloe. To Maya, Chloe would always be the kind young woman who shared pancake mornings and Lego afternoons. I watched their reunion, a mixture of emotion and deep satisfaction. My decision to open my door to a frightened young girl during a storm had set off a chain of events that not only protected my family, but had created ripples of positive change that spread far beyond my personal circumstances. It wasn't about vengeance, not really. It was about defining my own legacy, one built on compassion and justice, not prejudice and power. 6 months after the collapse of the Sterling Empire, life had transformed in ways I could barely have imagined. I was sitting in my new office now, a large, bright space, a far cry from the cramped apartment where it all began. The desk in front of me was covered with contracts, job offers, and invitations to speak at universities across the country. "Dad, did you see? It's in the paper again!" Maya came running in, her 8-year-old self brimming with newfound confidence, holding the morning edition of the Rosewood Tribune. The headline read, "Former security guard who stood up to corrupt billionaire opens social justice institute." Her natural joy, overshadowed for a time by the persecution, had blossomed anew. I smiled, taking the paper, looking at the photo of the Caleb Stone Institute for Social Justice, an organization I'd founded with the millions in damages won from Victor Sterling and donations from supporters around the world. What had begun as a simple personal defense had, against all odds, turned into a national movement against corporate abuse of power. "Dr. Reynolds is here," Maya announced, pointing to Martha walking down the hall with a stack of documents. Martha, who had become not only my partner at the Institute, but one of the most respected civil rights advocates in the country after the Sterling case, sat down. "Caleb, we have news about our friend," she said, a contained satisfaction in her expression. "Victor Sterling was officially declared bankrupt yesterday. The last of his assets were auctioned off to pay compensation to the families he persecuted." I nodded silently. Over the past few months, I had discreetly followed the systematic dismantling of his life. First came the criminal charges that resulted in 3 years in prison. Then came the civil suits that drained every penny of his fortune. Finally, complete social isolation. Former friends, business associates, even family members abandoned him when the extent of his crimes became public. He tried to contact me again, Marka continued. Third letter this month. He keeps trying to negotiate some kind of deal, offering information about other influential people involved in similar schemes. I looked out the window of my office, which overlooked the park where Maya played during recess. People like Sterling never really understand what they did wrong, I muttered. They just regret getting caught. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. An international call. Oxford University, offering me a chair in social justice studies based on my pioneering work documenting institutional abuse of power. I had inadvertently become one of the world's leading experts on how individuals can effectively confront systemic corruption. "Are you going to London, Daddy?" Maya asked, overhearing part of the conversation. "Just for a few months," I replied, stroking her hair, "to teach other people how to defend themselves when powerful people try to hurt them." Meanwhile, across town, Victor Sterling sat in his small prison cell, surrounded by newspaper clippings documenting his downfall. Each headline was a painful reminder of how he had completely underestimated a former Marine from the suburbs. His lawyers had abandoned his case when he could no longer afford their fees. His wife had divorced him and moved to another state under a new name. His children refused to take his calls. The most brutal irony was that Sterling, who had spent decades using his wealth to silence people he considered inferior, now depends on the charity of the prison system for his basic needs. The man who once owned 3 mansions now shared a 6-foot space with a cellmate who treated him with the same contempt he had shown vulnerable families. On the afternoon of that same Friday, I received an unexpected visitor. Chloe Moore, now using her mother's surname, knocked on the door of my institute. She had changed dramatically in recent months, her appearance reflecting a confidence and purpose she had never shown during her years as a privileged heiress. "I wanted to thank you in person," she said, sitting down in the institute's reception room. "Not just for protecting me, but for showing me that there are people willing to do what's right, even when it costs them everything." Chloe explained that she had used her remaining inheritance, the assets she had managed to preserve before her father's bankruptcy, to establish a fund to support families who were victims of corporate persecution. She was studying law and planned to devote her career to cases similar to mine. "My father always told me that people like you were different, inferior," she said, her tears reflecting years of personal growth. "It took me 22 years to understand that the only person who was inferior was him and me for believing his lies." Maya, who had just returned from school, entered the room and immediately recognized Chloe. "Emma!" she cried, running to hug her. To the little girl, Chloe would always be the kind young woman who had shared her pancake mornings and Lego afternoons. I watched the reunion with a mixture of emotion and satisfaction. My decision to take in a frightened young girl during a storm had set off a series of events that not only protected my family, but had created waves of positive change that spread far beyond my personal circumstances. That night, after Chloe left and Maya went to bed, I sat alone in my office, reviewing the Institute's reports. In just 6 months, we had helped 43 families confront abuses of power, resulting in total damages of over $8 million and the arrest of 12 corrupt executives. My phone rang once more. It was a CNN reporter requesting an interview for a documentary on the Sterling case that would be broadcast nationally. I declined politely, as I did with most media requests. My victory had not been about fame or recognition. It had been about protecting my daughter and proving that justice knows no class or bank account. When I closed my eyes that night, my last thoughts were not about Victor Sterling rotting in a prison cell, or about the millions of dollars my institute was bringing in, or even about the prestigious offers that arrived weekly from universities around the world. I thought about a storm on a cold night, about a frightened young woman who needed help, and about my instinctive decision to open my front door. That simple choice to show kindness to a stranger had become the foundation for everything that followed. I had learned that true revenge is not destroying those who hurt you. It is building something so meaningful and powerful that it renders any damage they tried to cause irrelevant. Victor Sterling had tried to break a humble family, but he ended up creating a movement that would protect thousands of other families in the future. Maya slept peacefully in her room, secure in the knowledge that her father was a man the world respected and admired. She would grow up knowing that strength doesn't come from how much money you have or how powerful your enemies are. It comes from always doing what's right, even when it costs everything. And especially when everyone assumes you don't have the power to fight back. The best revenge, I had discovered, is to build a life so full of purpose and impact that those who tried to destroy you become nothing more than irrelevant footnotes in the story of your victory. And while Sterling languished in obscurity and failure, I knew that every new family protected by my institute was further proof that kindness, when combined with courage and intelligence, always triumphs over corrupt privilege. The story of Caleb Stone and Victor Sterling is more than just a tale of triumph over adversity. It's a powerful lesson etched in the very fabric of human experience. It reminds us that judgment, often a knee-jerk reaction based on appearance, background, or social standing, is a cage we build not just for others, but for ourselves. Victor Sterling, blinded by his own privilege and deeply ingrained prejudice, saw only what he expected to see, an inferior man he could easily crush. He never bothered to look deeper, to see the quiet strength, the meticulous discipline forged in the crucible of military service, or the unwavering love of a father. His arrogance was his undoing, proving the old adage, "Pride goeth before a fall." This narrative powerfully illustrates that true worth isn't measured by the zeros in your bank account or the influence of your last name. It's found in the integrity of your character, the resilience of your spirit, and the unwavering commitment to what is right. Caleb's unwavering composure in the face of relentless threats, his meticulous documentation, not born of suspicion but of habit, became his most potent weapon. He didn't fight fire with fire, he fought it with truth and quiet preparation, allowing his oppressor to reveal his true colors and, ultimately, seal his own fate. For all of us, this story is a mirror. It asks us to look at our own biases, to question the narratives we've been fed, and to recognize that every person carries a unique strength, often hidden beneath layers of societal judgment. When faced with injustice, the impulse might be to shrink, to stay silent, to accept the hand we're dealt. But Caleb's journey shows us the transformative power of choosing courage over comfort, of speaking truth to power, even when the odds seem insurmountable. It's about finding your voice, or in Caleb's case, letting your actions and meticulous records speak volumes. We hope Caleb's journey has resonated with you, stirring something deep within your own heart. Have you ever faced prejudice or witnessed an injustice that left you feeling powerless? What lessons have you learned about resilience and finding your own worth? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Your experiences are invaluable. If this story touched you, please give it a like to show your support. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring narratives that challenge assumptions and celebrate the indomitable spirit of humanity. May you always find peace and hope even after the stormiest of nights.